Good evening. The regular meeting of the Richmond Board of Education will come to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Sherry, our mission statement, please.
At Richmond Community Schools, we provide a quality education that empowers students to be successful in a global community.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Deb?
Here.
Angela? Here. Kyle?
Here.
James?
Here.
Danielle? Here. Margaret? Here. And I'm present. We have a quorum.
Thank you. I'm looking for a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Do I have support?
Support.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. I'm looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
A second?
Support.
Any discussion? Mr. Walmsley?
I would just like to recognize Mr. Swanger, Harold Swanger. He's been a computer and network technician. He will be resigning from the district at the end of the school year to seek employment in a different field than education. So he was part of the, he was actually one of the first hires after Eric's been here when we went to the one-to-one, and has been outstanding and dedicated to primarily the middle school for his year. So I wish him the best.
Anything else?
And there were no corrections on the minutes from the April 11th that was brought to my attention.
Thank you. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. At this time, we're going to do our presentations. We're going to start off with our Outstanding Teacher of the Year recognition. So the board knows they're going to do all three of them, and then we're going to get up and take a picture and do something like that. So Ms. Arrow?
Thank you. We have lots of amazing teachers here at Richmond, but we have three in particular, the one for each of the levels for our Outstanding Teachers of the Year. Last Tuesday, we got to celebrate at the Macomb County Outstanding Teacher Banquet at the Mirage. It was a lovely evening. This year's theme was "Thank you for being the light in the life of a child." They received little lanterns. It was actually quite precious. It reminds us that teachers are truly the heart of education, and we're just very grateful to have such amazing teachers here. Before I hand it off to principals to have speeches for their teachers, I just wanted to relay one of my favorite quotes about teachers. A good teacher can change things, but a great teacher can change everything. So to start, let's have Ms. Manguni.
All right, good evening. I'm honored to be here tonight to formally congratulate Mrs. Constance as the Lee Elementary Teacher of the Year. Every morning you could find Miss Constance in the hallway greeting her students with a smile, letting them know that she is genuinely interested to be there. The relationship that Mrs. Constance builds with her students allows her to maximize her instruction in the classroom. She's a champion for her students every day. And I would like to take a minute to just recognize, when I say every day, I think it is worth noting that in the past 3 years, with everything that has gone on, Miss Constance has only missed 3 days of work out of 3 years. That in itself, I think, says a lot. So I'd just like to I never really had a doubt that Miss Constance was a wonderful teacher from the time we hired her, but I do remember one monumental day I was called up to the big leagues to do indoor recess supervision at lunch. And I was invited by one of her students to come to the carpet and play a vocabulary game for recess. I was happy to join in. And about midway through the game, one of her students said, "Mrs. Manguni, can you do it like Miss Constance does it?" So I didn't know what that meant, so I thought, well, enthusiasm and cheerfulness is what she does, so I'm definitely going to amp that up, and so I did. But that wasn't good enough, because at the end of it, I had another student say, "Mrs. Manguni, when Miss Constance comes back, I'm going to ask her to show you how to be a real teacher." So at that point in time, I knew that Miss Constance was irreplaceable to her students. But not only does Miss Constance dedicate herself to the classroom, she takes every leadership opportunity in our building. So we know it takes a the village, and she is that person. So to name a few, she's the chair for March's Reading Month. She's on the PBIS committee. She's the grade level representative on our science curriculum review team, and I could go on and on. There's just no end to her dedication, not only to her classroom, but to Richmond Community Schools as a whole. We are very lucky to have her as a part of our district and community. Congratulations.
And next, we have Mr. Bartels from the middle school.
Good evening. Thanks for having us tonight. I am honored to talk about Miss Molly Shack as our Teacher of the Year. Being a son of a former music teacher who lived what her kids are living, and to be in charge of a program 612 in 2 different buildings, and the exhaustion I saw in my mother's eyes, I see with Miss Shack. And like my mother, Ms. Shack does an absolute fantastic job without complaint. I want to read what Colin Boyd, a 12th grader, said about Ms. Shack this year. He said, Mrs. Shack has always pushed us and encouraged her students to pursue their love for music. She receives students of all backgrounds and treats them uniquely but equal. Some members come into band never touching an instrument, while others come with years of experience. In my case, I had been playing the piano for 2 years and knew the basics of music. She had been pushing me to thrive in the music department for nearly 7 years now, and without her, I wouldn't have had the confidence to accomplish the things I am now most proud of. She helped me become a section leader in a marching band, learn the piccolo. I've also received a Division I and duet solo ensemble with her guidance and support. She knows how to brighten everyone's day and has endless patience, inspires, and achieves greatness. I'm grateful to have been able to have Mrs. Shack as my teacher. I couldn't agree more with what Colin has said. Oftentimes when I'm in Mrs. Shack's class and I observe her, she can play every single instrument. She is very, very, very talented. So she'll show the kids how to play, but then she'll also play it so they can hear the correct sound. She was also a proud member of the marching band for Michigan State University. She's very passionate, talented, team player, dedicated, reliable, involved, PBIS recommendations and support, curriculum meetings, school improvement team member in the past. We would consider her one of our specials leaders. Her marching band, we talked about Colin and some of his accomplishments, but the marching band often gets the best BWAC rating when they compete. If you've heard them at the halftime shows, they're remarkable and they're tough pieces to play. And her concert bands have gotten Division I ratings constantly. And this year, she brought the middle school a Division I rating, first time ever. So RMS is lucky to have a teacher with the quality, passion of someone as skilled as Mrs. Shack. Mrs. Shack.
And last, we have Andy Castle for the high school.
Thank you, Ms. Sarah. Good evening. The 2022 Richmond High School Teacher of the Year, Mrs. Amy Smallwood, wears many hats, but this evening we're going to focus on her in the classroom. Mrs. Smallwood is a type of dynamic instructor that all educators should strive to emulate. As a teacher of multiple languages in Spanish this year, Amy brings this language alive for her students. No 2 days are the same in Senora Smallwood's class. Students in Senora Smallwood's class are immersed in the Spanish language and culture, helping cement linguistic concepts and phonetics needed to learn the language from the very start. Students are consistently engaged in multiple learning activities, from group work and games that get the students up and moving, making that mind-body connection, to the creation of videos and games that give students an individualized license to learn. When you walk by Mrs. Smallwood's class, she's rarely ever in her classroom for the entire class period. This year, Senora Smallwood has created a mentorship between her higher level Spanish students and lower elementary school students at Lee, helping build the next generation of Blue Devils and their love for foreign language. Fostering mentorships and relationships between students of all ages at Richmond High School. When speaking to students about Mrs. Smallwood and what makes her such a dynamic teacher, they said her strong passion for education and love of learning over and over. Amy's passion for her education shows through in her daily commitment to Richmond High School and Richmond Community Schools as a whole. Every time that bell rings and Mrs. Smallwood starts teaching, Richmond High School and the Richmond community is a better place. Congratulations, Amy.
So all the winners would like to come up, and we can all take our picture with them, with the board. You can go right in front here, because then I can scoot back.
Perfect, yes, thank you. I'll just say loud, this out.
Yep. And 1, 2. All right, congratulations.
Elena, I'm going to share the story, the power of social media. When we announced the Teacher of the Year, on my Facebook, my personal Facebook post, my aunt from Georgia went to school with Elena's father, grade school at Guardian Angels School in Detroit. So she reported back and shared, so down in Atlanta, our Teacher of the Year has got recognized throughout, and it got shared multiple times. But I can echo what the principal said. These three are just a prime example of quality teachers among many that we have. Eleni, as Heidi said, when you walk in her room, there's always a smile. That first impression kids get to make sure their day is great is there every single day. And to be absent with everything that's been going on only 3 days, that's pretty remarkable. I can't say that. So, Molly, one of the things I remember strongly about Molly was when middle school went to standards-based grading. I remember going to watch one of the training sessions, and you were working with a group of teachers in the classroom about proficiency scales, and you were relating it to the band. I think you had some math teachers in there, and so it was early on. It was only 3 years ago this was, or maybe 4 years. I can't remember. But Molly's dedication to that music and the arts is just as important as math and science. Is what makes Richmond a great school district, and her dedication to be part of the team at the school speaks volumes. She has no problem sharing ideas with me, kind of giving me suggestions on how things to do, and I appreciate that because she's always looking out for the program in general. Andy's right, no 2 hours of the day are the same with Mrs. Smallwood. I haven't had the chance to get as much as I would like, but the times I had, she has activities to engage kids all the time. It's not a textbook driven, it's really infusing the language and getting kids to love and see her passion for the language. So these are just 3 small examples that I have with the individuals, but they do remarkable work, and I can't thank them enough for what they do. So congratulations.
Okay, we will be moving on. Our next presentation is from Mr. Walmsley about our in-house custodian implementation plan update.
So in your packet, I have provided the PowerPoint for you to follow along, but I wanted to share with the board where we are in the implementation plan for bringing our custodians back in-house. So to talk about a little of the structure going into next year, we have the Director of Athletics, Facility, and School Safety, which is a member of the Teamsters Local 214 and the Richmond Administrators Association. That's Chris Reiner. He will be the person overseeing the custodians as we begin this implementation plan. Under him, we have posted currently a secretarial position who is part of the Teamsters Local 214 Secretary. Okay, I'll follow on the screen just one like secretarial group. Let's try this again. And then under them, we will have 3 general maintenance / custodian positions. They will have a light custodial cleaning job or load, but they will be primarily focused on the general maintenance of the building, setting things up for events, etc. And then we have...
Do you know that it's dictating
what you're saying.
as you're saying? Do you have something pushed?
My screen's blank.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Well, no, I think it'll be good for those in the viewing
There
audience
we
who
go.
have a hearing issue. Your words are
I didn't know this was a
so we're
feature on
good.
PowerPoint, so it's a good thing to learn. So,
We have our own closed caption.
we have our own closed caption, very good. We'll have then a total of 9 custodians, 3 AM custodians, and 2 PM or 6 PM custodians in the evening. So there will be a team of 4 in every building. I am watching this very closely because our goal is to be fully staffed. And I'm going to talk to you how we're going to go about doing that. But I am also looking at, we may need to add additional custodian because we have added square footage to our building. And we've added 10 classrooms, about 10,000 square feet at the elementary school alone. That's additional areas to clean for a staffing level that's at our same level. We've added roughly, about 1,000 square foot of classroom, another 4,000 classroom space at the middle school with the 4 new classrooms. So we are watching this because we may have to add a split custodian between 2 buildings. Up here in your chart, you have this structure, kind of organizational. Mr. Reiner will report next year directly to Mr. Thiel, who is in HR. He has operations background from his previous district. I will be working very closely with them, but from an organization. Mr. Reiner currently works very closely with Jamie right now, dealing with athletic coaches and postings, etc. So the next slide talks about the schedule. Our current schedule is to have the AM custodian remain the same, 6 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. The PM custodians to be 2:30 in the afternoon to 11. And then our general maintenance is an overlap of the 2, which would be between 9 a.m. and 5:30. This was designed to do, number 1, after school hours to do some of the maintenance stuff. So if it's broken that day, we can hopefully get it fixed that day. It allows also to set up for evening activities and events that need to take place. So it's not taking the evening custodians away from their normal cleaning, but allow that to happen. It will also provide support for the day custodian, particularly around the lunchtime hours. There's a lot that has to get done and turned over in that lunchroom and cleaned up, etc. So this is our current structure. In your packet, you have an example of the individual contracts. These are non-union employees, so we have to issue them an individual contract. The contract basically for the benefits includes the general maintenance custodian is $19.50 an hour. Again, the expectation is they have a higher level degree or capacity to be able to do general maintenance. Like I said, paper towel dispensers, basic, I'm not looking at rewiring and so forth, but just kind of basic general maintenance. The custodians are $16 an hour. That is more than what we're currently paying them currently through ABM. The other benefits that they're receiving are different than what they currently have if we're comparing it to our existing with the third party. Personal time off, we put everything in hours because sometimes the custodian will take an hour here, an hour there. It equates to 12 days, basically 1 day a month they accrue for the 96 hours in the year. Vacation days, it's similar to what is in other contracts, or not all of them, but similar. Basically after a year of working, you get a week, after 5, you get 2 weeks, after 10, For 11, you get 3 weeks. They have bereavement like every other employee in the district, up to 5 days, depending on the timing and so forth. Benefits, I think this is going to be a significant district or difference between what our current custodians have and what we're offering. Their insurance plan is like everybody else in the district. They become a group in our insurance program. Healthcare, we pay up to the legislative, thank you. That would help if I got caught up here. Healthcare, we pay up to the legislative hard cap, which for a single subscriber is nothing. They would not have any out-of-pocket expenses as an employee. That is a significant savings if our current custodian chooses to stay with the district because they pay significantly for their health care. Dental, vision, and AD&D, accidental death and dismemberment, life insurance, and long-term are consistent with a majority of the other employee groups in the district, where the district pays 100% of that and the employee pays 0. Part of this is we're trying to be able to attract people to our district, and for some custodians in other districts, their entire paycheck is going towards health insurance and so forth. So it's a struggle to survive. We're trying to be able to provide a package that is an incentive to want people to choose Richmond. We will also be issuing, like we do with bus drivers, uniforms. It's a polo style shirt. We'll be issuing 5 shirts each year to them, so that will be a line item in the upcoming budget. We are working with a partnership with a local screen company in town that basically when we hire, we turn on the form and they go and pick up their shirt. Like custodians, like transportation, every other year we issue them a new coat for custodial or bus drivers. I don't know if you're aware of that. We would do the same for custodians. Every other year we issue them a coat, particularly for the outside work when there's snow shoveling and so forth in the winter. We have been working on the Custodial Handbook, which outlines all the details. Mr. Thiel, Tammy, Shad, Renee, Pam Daly, and myself have been done the framework of it. Today, Mr. Reinhardt and I met with Mr. Thiel, and we went over the draft of the handbook. The expectations, we'll be bringing that handbook to you on May 9th for review with approval on the 23rd. The handbook really outlines the procedures and protocols of the custodial group, the expectations, a lot of the legal jargon that we have to have in our handbooks, etc. Some of the other things that we have been working on, each custodian will now receive a district email. It should be email accounts, not emails, I apologize. They're no longer a third-party email that they'll get, so they're just like every other employee, their communication will be sent directly to them. We have purchased a system called FMX Facility Management System, and there's 3 folds to this. One is currently our work orders are done through a form that's on our website. That form then is routed to certain people in the organization. The user never knows if the form actually got sent. They fill it out and it's sent, and so the assumption is it's gotten there. And then from there, there's no current system that tracks that other than a very manual, paper-oriented system. So the FMX work order system is the user will actually be able to send their work order. They can actually see and log in where it is in the process and if anything's been done. And when the work order is closed, it automatically notifies the user that it's been completed and finished. So we're trying to create some accountability and chain order. In the work order process, that secretarial position will be the first, the person who deals with these individually. They will either send the work orders to the general maintenance custodian, or they'll be sent to a third party. So for instance, if we have a cracked toilet that is beyond the scope of the general maintenance, we will send it to our plumber that we have on file for the district. Oftentimes we have knobs that get taken off sinks that just disappear, primarily at the high school, Mr. Castle, that just disappear. So sometimes the custodians can fix them, sometimes we have to replace faucets and figure out how it got there. But so that will be the tracking device on that one. The other aspect is this, so as a user, I can, as an administrator or as the custodian, I can log into the system. It gives me a calendar of when work orders were submitted and an approximate due date that they're due, so that we know we can start planning and doing basic project management of closing out those work orders. The same thing happens with facility use. We're going to move to an online facility use calendar. It is the same system, but basically when you put it in, it automatically puts it on the calendar. Currently, that facility use goes to Keith Christmas, one of our IT guys. He makes sure everything's cleared, and then he manually puts it onto the district website and calendar. And this would be basically a one-view calendar that you can see everything going on in the district. It does have the ability that if you only want to see the elementary items, you can just filter things that are going on at Lee, and we'll just show you those items too. So from a building principal's perspective, that's going to be an invaluable tool for them just to see visually what's going on in their building. And then finally, the third part of the FMX system is a custodial cleaning checklist completion. So basically, as I'm a custodian, I go into room 205, and there is a list of items that, whether I'm an ABM or EnviroClean or now as a Richmond employee, there is a list of items that we're expecting to be done in a classroom. Vacuuming, maybe wiping down desk or dusting, wiping down sink, whatever the list is. So when the custodian is done with that room, we have purchased iPads for them that will be on their cart. They log in, they click basically 205 and check that it's all done, and then submit and goes on to the next one. Our goal in this is to look at efficiencies from the perspective of is one custodian taking longer to do, and is there ways that we can train them to, we have an approximate number of how long it takes to clean a classroom. Certain classrooms are a little more, and our room might take a little longer because they're typically a messier room. But it's a way of completing. The system does allow that you can set it up that the person who is in that room can be notified when their room's been cleaned. So we're trying to create a standard of excellence in the district that these are our employees now. We want the pride to come back to Richmond that we need to take care of our facilities. We've invested almost $38 million in new stuff, so we want to keep it that way. So again, it's another check. It's a way that we can use some of the data in this system to see is there training opportunities for us or better ways that we can clean, et cetera. We will be putting our custodians in our Red Rover absent management system, just like all of our staff have, so they'll report when they are not going to be at work or if they're using some of their time, such as vacation or PTO. They will be on a time clock system similar to our other hourly employees that we have been slowly moving to get them. It just reduces downtime, and it's a more accurate reporting of an employee's, less room for errors for an employee's work time. There will be a whole Safe Schools module that we will have to go through it when we hire employees, as well as our training that we're planning. And recently, we have met with a company which we used back when we had EnviroClean as a custodian, because we ordered the supplies for EnviroClean, but APAC, to create a ordering process so that the general maintenance, basically the first of the month, they can take an inventory of what they have, place their orders, and we can do a group one order for the district, and then process that order so we can get as much bulk pricing as possible. We don't do a large quantity in this district, so in the past we've ordered about $25,000 worth of supplies. We'll be monitoring that from it would be your cleaners, your disinfectants, your paper products, etc. And then the other thing that we're working on is any of the cleaning supplies that we currently use, we have to have the MSDS sheets on those materials and train the custodians in the proper use of those materials and so forth. So that whole database will be available for the public to view, or anybody, as well as our employees from that aspect. So where are we going? On May 18th, we are doing a job fair for current ABM employees. It's basically a three-part. We'll be hosting it in the media center here. We will do a presentation on the position, the benefits, and see if they're interested. We have moved to an online application, or I should say we are moving. It should be finished by then. Jamie and I have been going through the training to make that live. Currently we do paper applications, and then when there's a position open, we're copying them, sending them to a folder to a principal. We're trying to automate that so that whoever the administrator is, whether it's a principal or director, they can log into the system and do a search by applicants and review those applicants. All right, they'll fill out the online application. Since we already have the fingerprints on our current employees, We would just be, part 3 would be sending them for a pre-employment physicals and drug screening. So for that aspect. On June 1st, we will be doing an outside applicants. It's from 3 to 5 again here in Richmond High School Media Center. We are currently scheduled to be, or planning on advertising in the newspapers on May 8th, May 25th, which is a Wednesday, and then May 29th and June 1st, which is the Sunday prior, in the Macomb Daily and Voice. We will be, again, going through the presentation of positions, the online application, but this one's going to add a third part. We're going to do on-site interviews to interview candidates to see where fit they might be, and then ultimately send them for background checks, which is fingerprinting, eye chats, pre-employment physicals, and drug screening. But the goal here is to get a cadre of individuals that will be ready for training. So once they've gone through the process, the following week we would then notify them, offering them positions once we have the background. Start date for them would be, officially it's a July 1, but we are scheduled to do training beginning the week of June 20th and June 27th. And when I say training, that's all the legal stuff that we have to do, the bloodborne pathogens, et cetera. But also the training is going to involve, okay, as a group, we're going into a community bathroom, a large bathroom. We're going to show them how the expectation of that to be clean, or go into a classroom. We're going to show them what a classroom cleaning is to be done, give them an opportunity to clean a classroom, and then go back and critique or figure out what went well and what didn't, so that we can set that standard of excellence in-house throughout that process, going through and doing waxing of floors and showing them to make sure everybody knows how to do stuff. Officially, they start July 1, which is the next fiscal year. In the calendar, the custodians, as well as other 52-week employees, work 260 days a year, and then from that, there's so many holidays that are part of it. But if you count the number of days between Monday and Thursday from July 1 to June 30th, there's actually 261 days. So oftentimes there's one day that's a non-work day. In this case, as an organization, that's July 1. So their first official day under the new fiscal year will be a holiday, July 4th, because that's one of the 10 holidays, but it will be July 5th as their first day. So there's a lot we've been going through. I want to thank the administrators group, the secretarial group, in working through the logistics and from the procedures of the roles of the administrator, or the roles of the secretary and the posting. The board, you approved that amendment to the contract for the secretary for that position, so I appreciate your efforts in this. There's a lot of logistics that go into bringing employees back in-house, so but we are on full steam and moving ahead. I would take any questions you might have, just on custodian.
Just to reinforce, the equipment, we're still good. We don't have to worry about equipment, because the equipment is ours.
Our equipment based on the ABM contract, so
right.
We own that equipment. Now, most of that equipment is anywhere between 4 and 5 years old, but it's ours.
And then what's the lifespan, or when would be the time? Does that come into the budget? You know, like if 3 years from now we have to replace, is that kind of stuff going to be put in?
It is. When we talked about this back in February, and we talked about if we wanted to bring it in-house, it was going to cost about $350,000 more than what we budget. In that number, we had talked about some supplies. That, again, it was our shot in the dark at what we think it is. But we shouldn't be in a position that we got to replace all the equipment at once.
Okay. So
it would be, over time, we might have a line item that's $10,000 that's budgeted for equipment, and this year we're going to replace these items because they're beyond repair. Next year we'll target to create on a cycle of that equipment replacement.
But to start up right now, we don't.
But start up right now for July when we have the supplies we need. So part of the conversations, like with APAC paper that we've had, is to talk about, be able to make sure we have toilet paper, paper towel, cleaning supplies beginning July 1. Because ABM, technically their contract would be through June 30th for supplies that we need through June 30th.
Okay.
Right. Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry. Go on, Sharon.
I know I asked about subs and how we'll go about getting them. I forgot the name of our sub.
EduStaff?
Yeah. Do they have them? You said no, I think.
Jamie, we can do them through EduStaff.
You could put in for them, but the chances of getting them are pretty slim.
Part of it's going to be that job fair and recruitment is if we may have people that are individually, don't want to work 5 days a week, but they're willing to work a couple days, and be able to put them on our sub list.
Okay.
We have some substitutes, particularly in the food service, that we are hire in-house because they've been former employees and they hire. We may, if we get extra, we may hire them just in-house and be able to call on them because they're a unique group. We also have the flexibility in that individual contact to, depending on activities that are going on the weekend, to flex time, so to try to minimize overtime costs, et cetera. But we are going to be working towards getting substitutes for this group because, you know, if there's only one person in the evening cleaning the high school, the job's not going to get done. It's just too large.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Have we thought of, or was there just any discussion about paying that evening crew a little bit more, or is that a past practice with anybody, or?
We did, and currently, is it $14.50 and $15.50? We switched the model. Usually the day crew made more.
Okay.
The last adjustment to pay scales we did, and it's probably been several months now, it might have been almost 6 months now, we switched the model and paid our evening custodians more than our day. They all went up, but we paid our evenings more with the effort of trying to get people here. Part of our challenge with our current custodial group, it would take a month, 2 months just to process employees. And people who are looking for jobs don't have 2 months to wait and sit around for a job. So in-house, you know, we believe as long as we have a great relationship with the Richmond police, they go with their fingerprints, usually 24 hours, we have their fingerprints done. A lot of the stuff that we need, or the pre-employment, we have a partnership with Henry Ford, we give them the form, they go right down to Henry Ford and get that pre-employment stuff completed. So we believe it's going to be exponentially sped up in getting people processed to get them here. The rates are in the area probably the highest in this area. So we're hoping to draw people. My goal is to be fully staffed. We have not been fully staffed in at least 2.5 years. Pre-pandemic, we weren't fully staffed.
Are the hours consistent through the summer?
The only change is sometimes we go to a 4-day week, pretty much kind of the month of July, where we'll do 4 10s and have Fridays off, but the hours would be consistent. Sometimes in the summer, for the custodian, we'll move everybody to a day shift. But we have in the past had people work their regular schedule because they have another job in the day and they can't move to the day shift. We've offered it just to move people to the day shift to give them some summer evening, you know, kind of personal time or downtime, but they are the same number of hours. It's 40 hours a week.
Full-time?
Full-time.
All year? Great.
All year. I mean, little things like, you know, we try to make their holidays the same as everybody else in the organization from comparative. Like currently they get 5 holidays, they're going to 10 holidays, so that's huge. Currently they're paying substantial out of their pocket for a single subscriber plan. This plan is the same plan we offer every employee in the district. Same plan I have from the administrators, the secretaries, with the exception of teachers. Teachers are the ones that have MESA. Everybody else has a Blue Cross and Blue Shield through SESA.
Does anyone else have any other questions? Thank you, Brian, for that update. Okay, our next item on our agenda is for Ms. Sutton. She's going to give us an MISD operating budget update.
Actually, Brian and I went on Thursday, and I really enjoyed it. It was pretty eye-opening and getting I'm a numbers person, so it was nice to hear all the different numbers that they had and stuff like that. I just wrote a couple of notes from some of the speakers, but two of the biggest things I know, a couple of meetings ago we talked about the summer program and improving summer school, and they were mentioning that when they started their summer school programs, they started with 1,700 students, and this summer they're anticipating like 8,900 students, so really expanding those summer programs, and they've been a huge hit, and they're starting a teacher cadet program as well for the summer for the high school kids if they're interested. GSRP, they're going to do a GSRP fair with all of the GSRPs in Macomb County at the ISD on a Saturday in June, to kind of like a job fair for the students to come in, parents to come in, and kind of have a little table set up from the district to talk about our GSRP program and kind of get those applications right then and there with them, so we don't have to kind of help us, put our neck out there and get some people. So, and the little Inventors Program that we piloted last summer, there was 2 districts, ourselves and another one, and this year, so far, they have 9 districts signed up for it, so that's getting really big. I thought it was interesting, they have the kids invent something, and then they have local businesses actually build what the kids invented to a full scale, and be able to see, would it work, or what it would really look like, and, go from that. So they have area businesses that are doing all the building for us for that stuff. They're continuing mental health and substance abuse awareness training. They're trying to move PDs. I know as a teacher you hate to go to a PD after school, but it's also a double-edged sword. You don't like it during the day, then you got to do sub-plans. But they're trying to move to more after-school PDs because of the lack of subs and having to pull teachers out of the classroom to get those speeches. And over the last 12 months, they're back up to about 8,000 participants. So that's really good. It's getting kind of back to pre-pandemic offerings. One thing that the special ed gentleman said I thought was interesting, I didn't know about. The special ed, if we have students who come in and we don't have technology for them, but they might need it, you can rent them from the ISD to see if it's something that would work for the student, kind of like a try before you buy, and be able to use it before you have to make that investment to see if it's something worthwhile. I thought that was really good. The finance guy was talking about the fact that it costs about $7 million a day to run the ISD IT for all the districts. Thought that was huge. That was just a crazy number that blew my mind. And then they did talk about legislation and state proposals that have come around the last couple of weeks. Brian will probably mention that later, but one thing they talked about is that the Senate has in their bill or in their proposal to have $500 million invested in the consolidation of school districts. So not just like services within the districts, but like districts as a whole. So the Senate is proposing throwing out incentives of $500 million for districts to consolidate. So definitely something to watch there. And then they talked about that the foundation looks like pretty strong to be somewhere between 415 and 450 for next year of an increase. So those were I don't know if Brian had any other notes, but those were the big points.
Kind of takeaway to piggyback, they're not planning on reducing any programs. They're still planning on offering everything they've done this year. They've had to adjust some things with contract settlements and so forth, and additional costs. You have in your board packet the actual budgets the ISD. I can speak as a superintendent. They provide a wealth of resources for us, whether it's from the superintendent role, whether it's from the curriculum director, special ed, business, the systems that we use as a county. We save hundreds of thousands of dollars every year doing that rather than each individual district using their own system. We pay pennies when we get our bill for our portion of Power School or our portion for TiNet or whatever the case. It's pennies on the dollar what it would cost us if we had to find that system ourselves. They do a lot of resources. Along the mental health, they are bringing in a company for behavioral threat assessments that each building in the county, throughout the whole county, will be sending teams to, and I'll be giving you more information on that one. We're going to send part of teams on one day coming up, and then later on in the school year, we'll send the other half team. But it's basically looking when we have that school threat situation to be able to have a protocol in place that is consistent. It's provided by the Secret Service and based in research out of the University of Virginia. It's what many districts are doing that gives us some, as a team, criteria to go through to manage that threat assessment. If we would never be able to afford that training individually by our district. It is just extremely costly. But collectively as an organization, as a county organization, they're footing the bill for it because they want to get everybody on the same page. Much like we've done with our emergency response plans, we all have the same template. We just customize it for our district. So there are two things that are on their radar, and they couldn't because I had to leave early. But I don't know if they talked about it after, but there are some buildings at the ISD, some capital projects in construction that their buildings, Boveshin and I just had it at the tip of my tongue, that they are looking at replacing at some point down the road because the cost to renovate them would far exceed the cost of or almost be the cost of a new Bozanowski. Thank you.
Not Neil Reed? Not looking to spend any money?
Neil Reed was discussed, but it wasn't on the priority.
Yeah, it wasn't on the.
It wasn't
Just
on
joking, folks.
the
Just throwing it
most
out
immediate
there.
need. So, they have tried to, those have been kind of put on the back burner with COVID and doing everything to support the district. When we weren't getting dollars per pupil from a district, the ISD wasn't getting anything. So those have kind of been shifted on the backward. They're going to be coming more to light sooner than later. And I'll talk a little bit about the budgets coming up that Danielle talked about regarding from the state. But it would be my recommendation to the board that as a future meeting, that there's a resolution that you approve the ISD's budget on behalf of our district. So
One other thing I thought, when you mentioned that mental health that I remembered, I wrote down that currently they have 266 students in their mental health program that they, we refer them from the school districts, and they have 266 students who are within the program. 201 over the last 2 years have completed the program, and generally they stay for 4 to 6 months. So they're getting weekly counseling sessions. So those referrals are being followed up on, and those students are receiving services for up to 4 to 6 months, and they have graduations to, say that, they're in a better place, they're doing much better, this program is helping them, that type of thing. So I thought those numbers were huge, but at the same time, it's awesome that those students are taking advantage of those programs.
And what programs are those?
The counseling and mental health, when we refer students with all the stuff going on, where maybe
Our CARES Act is what.
Well, CARE doesn't have anything to do with ISD.
I'm trying to find the name of it really quick because I left mine. There's a service that the ISD would provide if we've got students who are severe that we can refer to. They have a team that would provide services for those students outside of care that we would do or psychology that based on a level of need for the child. It's another resource for county district or for local districts. They also put in if we need a threat assessment, they'll pay for the threat assessment for us. But it's that next level where there may not be resources in a district to provide what that child needs. So they have a team that through their referral process, they provide services, sessions for them, and they monitor.
Different from when our students get referred into the center-based program.
Correct. This is completely outside of
it's
any of the
completely
center-based
different from
programs. This is a support for our kids that.
And have we
that
ever
need.
sent any Richmond kids through that?
We have not.
Okay.
We have not.
Okay.
One thing that I'm looking at when we look at state budgets is the effort that our legislators are going to put towards mental health. I know the principals just left, but every district is reporting with kids that have not been in school for whatever reason throughout the pandemic. We are seeing more and more behavioral issues that our current capacity, each district's current capacity is not enough. And so we're looking at what the state's going to be putting towards, they've talked about it, they've said things, but you got to put dollars in behind it and get people to go into counseling and social work and all those support services. So that's one thing that we'll be watching.
Anybody have any questions for either Mr. Walmsley or Mrs. Sutton? Okay, we will move on. Our next agenda presentation is from Mr. Walmsley about our general fund budget assumptions and discussion.
Okay, so I'm going to lead this, and I may pull Tammy in as we've been talking about, but this will be our first discussion on our FY 2023 budget. In your packet, or you should have a paper regarding enrollment projections, so I'll place that on the screen, but if it's too small to read. The enrollment projection, I was following what we have done for the last 8 years since I've been in the district, and basically we take the number of kids that are in a grade level and make the assumption all of those kids are going to move up a grade level. And so when you look at it under October of 22, these are our enrollment projections for each grade level. I am anticipating we have the same number of ECSE kids. We can go up to, I believe it's 20 in the total that we could have. So assuming the same number we have now from our February count of 17. I'm assuming 120 kindergartners. Currently to date, we have 95 kindergartners registered as of today. We had them in the docket last year, but they were never registered and completed. So we are at a higher rate now than we were last year. So I took what basically that kind of an average of what our kindergarten's been and used the 120. And then I moved every grade level up. Currently, we had, as of February, we had 123 for kindergartners. Those are now 123 first graders, and so forth, and moving it all up. So when you look at the count, and I'll enlarge it on the screen, our projected student count is 153806 for a fall count. Remember, 90% of our foundation comes from, our student count comes from the October, 10% comes from the February. If you look under the column for February 2022, you'll see that we're 2 students up. This is the first time, and I can't tell you how long, I have actually said in February we were higher than our October count. It's been a long time since that's happened. But when you do the 90-10 blend, usually I'm up here predicting flat or loss of students. Those of you who've been on the board or have sat in some type of seat out here, when you do that count, I'm predicting that we should be up 11.12 FTEs for student enrollment. So the first direction I'll be looking for as we build the budget is the board comfortable with this enrollment projection for next year based on patterns of how we've done it in the past? So you can see a glimpse, which would mean we're going to build a budget based on 11 students higher than we did this year.
I'm comfortable with that.
I think it's a very conservative approach. Our school choice could come in as it has been done in the past. I mean, you can see some of these numbers in the bottom. We were 25, 42, 38, 2 students. It's varied based on school choice. Earlier on, we were down 36, down 8 students. Again, all of these numbers are audited numbers, except for that we have not received the official February audited, but that's the numbers that were reported. And obviously, the October 22nd is a projection number. So if we're good, then what I'm going to show you forward is based on this student enrollment and some of the costs and items that we have.
Brian, can I ask a quick question that might have nothing to do with this, but it just popped in my mind, I didn't want to forget it. For the kindergartners, are we accepting waivers if they're not 5 by September 1st?
Yes.
We are?
Yes.
Okay, because I know some districts are not, I think because of the learning loss and the behaviors, so I just wondered if...
When the waiver comes in, the parent has to indicate reasons for it. All of the ones that I've signed, they have been in a program. If they have not been in a preschool program, I have asked either Mr. Gibson or Mrs. Manguni or someone else to follow up with that family or Pam to get a little more information on it, because statistically, kids who've been in a preschool program have a higher success rate in kindergarten. We haven't been receiving as many waivers as we used to, and I know the date moved back over years, and now it's September 1. But we still have to allow for waivers and look at that program.
All right, thank you.
I don't have any problem with that.
I'm just going to say I'm fine too
Yeah,
with our
It's the same process we have done. I think last year we assumed a flat enrollment, and it might have showed last year when we originally did it, a slight less. I'd rather be more conservative and have to add staff than get to a point where we don't have the kids and now I got to take teachers away or reshuffle them because it creates more chaos, if you will. The next sheet that you have talks about the budget, and it gives you kind of where we were each year since the FY15. Kind of my starting point when I started in Richmond to give you an idea. That's why I chose it. But you'll see at the top in the yellow column, you'll see 1537, which is the 11 students up. It would have been in the packet I gave you, or I think it was in the packet, it was in front of you in your envelope, but I also have it online. Our revenue with 11 students up, if you scroll down, you'll see the number 200. That's assuming we had a $200 per pupil increase. When we did tie the conversation about the custodians, if we were going to bring them back in-house, that was kind of the baseline that we needed to be able to bring them back in-house. So I built it based on that, which is about a 2.3% increase over our foundation allowance from previous year, which would be move us up to $8,900. That would be a $404,000 increased revenue. Now, I want to remind the board that any grants that we reduce in revenue, we automatically reduce the expenses, so it's a net on both of them. This is really funds that we have the ability to, even though grant funds are in that total $20 million and 19, those are going to be adjusted based on what we actually spent versus what we actually took in as we do the final budget and plan for next year, but that's a one-to-one. This is general fund dollars that you as a board have discretion over. So if you look in the FY22 column, you'll see the number 52,435. That's from February, what we plan to put into fund balance as of February. That number will change because we know things we budgeted for but didn't have the expense, or we budgeted more than what the expense was. So if you remember that 404 number, so some of the things that we have at the bottom, these are known costs we have or known expense line items that will go away or be reduced. For instance, we know the hard cap has increased for us, our responsibility. That equates to about $18,000 of a new expense to the district. So in red is new expenses. We have the in-house custodians, about $350,000 of a new expense over what we currently budgeted. Most of that is because of the retirement costs that we're paying. It's a significant increase over the third-party fee we pay. Settlement of the RAA contract. That is not necessarily just the step increase, but it's also pay differentials from the positions that Chris, the special ed director, and the new FICA and retirement that's associated. But going into next year, it would be 61. The contract steps were about 35-ish when we did the budget, when we settled that contract. The REA contract settlement for a step, that includes any costs associated with, such as not only the step, but those at the top that receive that 10A payment or that step 10A. It affects their longevity costs, those moving up to longevity. I don't know what that beeping is.
I know.
I heard it done twice. And anything associated with secretaries, or excuse me, REA. Secretarial costs for their contract for next year is $12,000. Parapro cost is $13,000. I am recommending adding a fifth grade teacher. We have currently 5 fourth grade teachers. We would move. That is the cost of full family, a teacher, not necessarily at step 1, depending, they may come with us experience to give us some wiggle room there. I'm also requesting that the board add another FTE for singleton classes. Our numbers generally have been up at the high school, that we now are adding classes that are creating singletons. So it may result in a teacher teaching on a prep. It may result in a teacher that has two certifications that can cover some of the classes. But in the initial scheduling process that we've done, and we have our third round next week. Pardon? This Wednesday, not next week, this Wednesday, thank you. We are narrowing that down to see what that number is, but this will give us some leeway so that we can run more courses, particularly, yeah.
So with what we're scheduling for the high school, we don't have enough teachers for what the interest is, the classes? I'm sorry if it's, but it's very foggy.
It depends on where we want to set that classroom level at. For instance, we have some AP courses that are set at a lower rate because fewer students are going into them. It's critical that we keep those AP courses because otherwise those families have the option to choose somewhere else to send their kid, and it's a domino. So we run some classes at around 10 kids. Mm-hmm. My target number for high school is I don't want any course over 25.
Okay.
When you look at particularly your course, because it's critical, that's what our target number. So we may have a creative writing course that might be at 30, but a 9th grade English class. So when we set that target, and it is just an arbitrary that we set as a district, by setting a certain class size, it determines how many sections I would need. And when you add up the number of sections I need,
right,
divided by every teacher teaches 5 classes, I need a few more sections to cover that offering.
And so this just all of a sudden is happening this year? Because I know before we've paid teachers the 1/6. I know we've done that. So that's basically what this is saying, because every year we don't know what we have until we have it.
Correct. This past school year, we did everything we could so that no teacher was teaching on a prep. And we actually added in the budget more FTs at the high school than at the previous, so that no teacher was teaching on their prep.
Okay.
There may be situation if we have a singleton course that I need a teacher to teach on their prep because I can't find a teacher for that one class. Take, for instance, culinary. We have enough kids to run 6 hours of culinary every day. Mm-hmm. So if we want to run that, I don't mean to have my back to, I apologize. If we want to run that, then the culinary, we have to find a culinary for 1 hour, or the culinary would teach on their prep. So if you think of it, if I'm putting more kids into culinary, they're not choosing something else. So we may not run something else. We have the computer science courses that we've got definitely numbers to put kids in there. We've got the automotive classes, so we're shifting.
But okay, and I get all that. Okay, but so we're shifting, so kids will go into things they don't want to go into because we're shifting.
We're trying to give kids what they want to go into.
Okay, so.
But let me give you this here. So let's say, for instance, there is a course that right now only has 10 kids in it. Mm-hmm. I would tell Mr. Castle and Mrs. Lebeck, take those 10 and put them in their second choice, mm-hmm. and we're not going to run this course. Mm-hmm. And that may result in just filling holes in other courses, room that we have to grow, or it may result by doing that and adding this course, we now have more people that want that to be their first course. So it's a shell game to get to a final number, so that we can say, okay, run the master schedule and now try to give every teacher a full schedule. And that's where you get into certifications and what we can.
And so this $80,000 is the ballpark?
It's a
because
ballpark.
We don't know, it could be $120,000.
It actually could be less if we have teachers teaching on the prep, because that $80,000 assumes healthcare costs. Right. So if we don't have to pay healthcare because we're having teachers teach on the prep, that could come down.
Okay.
A couple years ago, we were using the number 75,000. We've eliminated the first 2 steps off the teacher's contract. So we no longer have a base 0 anymore. They actually start with step 1. So we kind of shifted
Okay.
the matrix down to give us that wiggle room to bring people in at either step 1 or maybe a higher step based
Okay.
on years.
Brian, you said you weren't having any more than 25 in a class. Is that?
That's my target number.
Is that what it's been, or is that something new this year you want?
We have tried in the past, in the last couple of years, using 25. There have been some cases where it's gone over. It could be, I'm thinking like an AP, well, AP chemistry wouldn't have had it. Renee, can you think of one of the courses that we run high now?
History?
History, we've been trying to keep, if they're a core group, we've been
Yeah.
trying to keep them at that 25. Part of it is because we're held accountable to that score, and the more kids you have, the harder it is to do that individual.
About
It's
sociology.
more of unique course where we have a singleton and we've got 30 kids who want it, and we're trying to honor their first request, so we may have those classes that are 30. Design might be one, basic
Yeah,
design one, we
basic
get a lot of
design.
kids in that one, so we may start there, but when you get to the end of the art spectrum, you may not have as many kids in that AP art class or the Design 2 or some of those other ones. It's usually a singleton course. Math courses are typically run, the AP typically runs smaller. There's not as many kids going into the AP Math and the AP Science. Some courses we're alternating each year. We'll run this AP this year and the other AP the next year, so if they want both of them, they have a chance to get both of them. It's being very creative. Looking at the middle school schedule, they're offering now the STEAM, I'm sorry, not the STEAM, what's the course we had in the middle school? Well, let's talk about STEAM. If we add a fifth grade, right now, each of the 5 specials teachers for K-5 have one slot in their schedule that's open for an 8-week period. That will now be filled. They will have a full schedule. If we add a 6th class, 6 kindergartens or 6 second grade, now I got to look at having them teach on their prep for an 8-week period because they will now have maxed out their schedule. But 25 is my target number. There's nothing in stone or anything that we're looking. If you look at the kindergarten numbers, you're talking 120. You're about 20, 24, 25 in a class, and that starts getting me a little nervous when you're talking little guys, especially if we can't get that. We've got to be able to have that foundation in literacy, and that's a lot. Contractually, yeah, you could go up to 30 or 35 in the high school. I don't know where you'd put these kids, I'll be honest, in some of the classes, because physically there's just not the space, but it does run, I don't know if the teachers are still, at this point, I don't know if they're still going to vote on continuing the 7-period day. I haven't heard they're not. So that would add a mix if they're not going to do the 7-period day. That's an annual vote by the REA. But I'm assuming it will. I've heard nothing bad about it or no negatives about it.
Can I ask a question about that, Brian? Does the middle school run a 7-period day? Does the high school run a 7-period day?
The high school does not run a 7-period day.
Have we ever considered that?
There was a conversation that was had 2 years ago, and there was not support for a 7-period day at the high school. It's a negotiated item. I'll be honest.
Kids want more school, I don't know.
I would rather, in the high school, to look at some type of block scheduling, so that maybe they go to 4 classes each day, but their classes are longer, which gives them an ability to have 8 total classroom. If you go to a block scheduling, it allows us more flexibility for offerings. You can offer more. Sometimes the classes we offer, we put out this year to the teachers, what's a passion, what's an interest. Mythology, is that
That's maxed interest.
All right, so that's a new class, so those kids who might have chose something else are we can run mythology this year, but they're coming out of something else. But over the course of the several years, we have gone up. If you remember a couple of years ago, I was worried about going under that 500 number. We're above that 500 number, which is enough. 500 seems to be a scheduling magic number to maximize your schedule. When you go below it, you're going to run a lot of low classes, and it costs more to run. Did I answer? So when you look at those other ones, so I'd be looking at 2 FTEs to make sure we have in the budget. I'm going to skip down. We have a one-time bucket lift expense that we budgeted in this year's budget that we won't have next year for $10,000. We budgeted a maintenance vehicle in this year's budget that we won't have next year. We budgeted marquees and scoreboards, $170,000 that we won't have in next year's budget.
Scoreboards where? Scoreboards where?
Scoreboard, we added one additional scoreboard at the JV baseball. It was not in the bond budget.
Oh, okay.
Because the new construction would have,
Yep.
softball would have 2, so we want to make sure we have
Yep.
all 4 fields equitable.
The same.
So it's 1 scoreboard and marquees at 3 buildings. Signage and graphic, they are working on the showcase graphics right now, and the graphics in the gym, we budgeted $50,000. That will go away. We had some door expenses, replacing the door by the new addition to the high school. That door never got replaced, and it never got picked up in the scope. And there's a door at the kindergarten some doors in the elementary school that we're looking at. We had the football helmet purchase that we increased, that would show up in the final budget that we won't have necessarily next year.
Can I ask, this is 18,000? I thought we voted to spend 13,171.70.
We budgeted 18 because at the time we didn't know what it was going to be. The approval was 13, so there's a line item for 18 for the football helmet, but we didn't spend that full amount.
Okay, so this when it says one-time expense, that I'm not reading that we spent it, that was what we said, the budget, but we only spent 13,000.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Legal fees, we had quite a bit budgeted in legal fees. We can bring that down. Basically, we spend on an average year, 50-ish, 55,000. Well, my plan would be budgeting at 60,000 for next year. I don't expect to have that because all of our contracts settled. Usually, legal fees go up the year we start negotiating contract. And then at the end of this year, we have a voluntary severance reduction, 40,000 that goes away. So that will be, it's for the teachers that took the severance three years ago. So when you do the pluses and minuses out of the whole thing, we're net of putting $3,200 into fund balance at this point. Not doing anything else to the budget, not making any other changes to the budget. Now this again was based on a $200 increase per pupil. There are 3 things that the board needs to keep on the radar as we do the budget. One is this doesn't address any non-union contract settlement. Childcare, preschool, central office, they have a 2-year, most of them have a 2-year contract, but we only budgeted or did any type of increases for year 1 of the contract. So we got to look at a dollar value for that aspect for, like I said, childcare, preschool, IT, central office, directors, and non-union employees. The other thing that, as Renee's been doing curriculum, and we set this aside many years ago, a curriculum budget so we could have dollars to allocate for curriculum, costs are going up. And so if we use the number $100 per FTE, currently we have $100,000 that we budget every year. That's not covering all of our costs to do a curriculum with particularly some of the more expensive ones like science. I would recommend if the dollars are there and we get more per pupil, that we use $100 per FTE as our budget number. So that would mean we need about a $153,000 in that account to cover K-12 expenses. Again, it's if we have the dollars, whatever we have budget, we're going to make work, but there may be some, we got to decide we're not going to be able to do this, and that might be something that we have to do at a later point. And the last item is copiers. I'm very proud of what this board did at the beginning of the year in doing the set aside for turf, computers, bus replacements, so we aren't dependent on a future bond. But we need to look at copiers too on that one. It cost about $120,000 to replace our copier fleet district-wide. We purchased our copiers in 2017. We had a 4-year contract with them. We signed a 2-year contract agreement to extend the service warranty. Our cost per copy went up because obviously the machines are older, they're more likely to repair and break. So that extension goes through January of 2023, so this coming January. Again, based on preliminary numbers of my glancing over, I think we're going to come in better at the end of this year than we did. My recommendation to the board would be to replace the copiers with a one-time funding of what we were better this year from. Currently, we're 50,000. If we come in 100,000 better or 120, use this money, or part of the bond was technology copiers, but we're cutting close on dollars. It's getting tighter. And then begin putting a set aside of about 30,000 a year, so that after 4 years, you'll have the 120,000 in there to do copier replacement, much like we're doing with turf, computer replacement, and buses. We've never been in a position, this past summer, we were able in a position to start proactively thinking for the future. This would be the next big ticket item that we need to think about. So those are the 3 things that are still on the radar. Contract settlement, looking at the curriculum budget, though we do have an allocation, we need to look at how much that is, and copier reply. I guess I didn't have my glasses on. Copier replacement set aside. Reply. So what I want to show you is, if I'm going to go to the budget to give you a scenario, and this, if you can see the screen, otherwise I'll report it, but basically when we look at this master enrollment, the document you have in front of you, I can easily change that per pupil and see what the net impact is going to be on the organization. So a lot of times, this is what we've done in the past. Here's my enrollment projections. It goes all the way out to 2032, and every year I adjust it to using the same formula that we have. But if I go to the master, what I call the master document, and I change that per pupil number, and let me get to the right school year. To change that, currently the governor's budget is 435. The Senate budget, which was released last week, is 450. And the House is expected to come in, based on what we heard at the ISD, and it hasn't been released yet, around that same dollar. So if we just assumed 400, that's $711,000 of additional revenue based on the enrollment projections and everything we did. When you go the pluses and minuses at the end, that leaves you $300,000 to decide what you want to do as an organization, and then easily enough dollars to begin doing that set aside for copiers if you wanted to increase the curriculum budget, and then obviously settle the contract for non-union. 2 years in a row, we've never been able to have this conversation in the past. It's always been, we got to find 50, we got to find 80,000, or sometimes 200,000, and it's been a hard battle. So this would also be the conversation. I know Mr. Reinhardt presented the costs for athletics. If the board wanted to begin setting aside more money in supplies to be covering the cost of the true cost of sports, and so forth. So I just wanted to show that to you, so that, if everything comes, 200, I believe, is a very safe number based on what we've seen on 2 out of 3 budgets. But if it's higher, you've got some wiggle room to do other things and position yourself as a board to make long-term investments or begin setting money aside for those long-term investments. So, questions?
So would now be the time to ask the conversation with respect to athletics. I wasn't here that night of the presentation, and I did have a conversation with you, Brian, but I really don't get it. I don't think this is a true representation of what it costs for athletics, at least what I'm looking at. And I don't know what the conversation was at the board table, what questions were asked or what everybody else was thinking, but I was the one who initially asked about athletics, and I think we also talked at the time, Angela, the band, like what does it cost academic-wise, band?
Correct.
And so I would really like to find out that as well. What does that take academically to run?
Dollar amount, so, yeah, dollar amount.
To run the band program.
About
And so-
art, too. How about art? I think we talked about art in that mix, too.
Yeah, I don't care whatever. I
think it was our specials.
But I just, like I said, I wasn't here that night, so I don't know the conversation, but I'm just,
It's on YouTube.
What's on YouTube? Well, I'm sitting here with people, so if you ask questions, you can tell me what you asked. I don't need YouTube. But I'm just, I don't know that this is, I don't know that I got my answer, so I don't know what anybody else.
I think you did a relatively thorough
Oh, yeah,
job of
absolutely.
going over everything.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
I think you did a great job of going over everything. I did understand what he was saying. I do feel it's a good starting point. I agree with you that it's not all that we need. I agree. I think the numbers are a little low, but we would have to start somewhere, I guess. I would like to evaluate more. I feel certain sports need more staffing than others beyond just equipment. You might want to look into some things like that too. So, I mean, there was much answered, and he did do, I feel, a great job answering. So you might want to look into his presentation, but...
I'm looking at it.
But to me, I agree that it's not enough.
Well, I'm not even saying that it's not enough. I'm saying I don't know that it's there, because just talking when I'm looking at uniforms and, like, Kyle, maybe you can answer baseball. Baseball games, it says, takes $13,170 for equipment. So that's every single year. We get portable pitching mounds every year?
No. That dollar value represents if we were to start that program, what we need. So within that dollar amount,
Okay.
we would have to go the next step to say, okay, what is the annual cost?
Okay, then that's what I want. That's what I asked for.
He signed it for over 5 years, is what he was saying, right? Like those
Yes,
costs would
he
have
was
been
talking.
over a span of 5 years. So we would have been paying,
Yeah,
I think,
because
60 for something, 20 for
replacing
something
uniforms
else.
5 years, yeah, all of that. But I just, what does it cost?
Right now, to run that program.
Right.
Yes, so if we're putting into a budget for next year, that's what my question was. What does it take? And whether it's the art, the band, whatever, what does it take to run that? Not, we don't need those pitching mound things every year, but what you need? Obviously, you need balls every year. Obviously, volleyball need ball, that kind of stuff. So what does the school district have to provide to run that sport next budget year? That was my question. And Sherry's right, when talking about uniforms, it's in every 5 years or some of them are 3 years. So where are we at in this sport? Do they need new uniforms next year? And so if 4 sports need new uniforms, that's what goes in the budget. That's what I was asking, because that's the only way you truly know what athletics is going to cost you.
Do we get an line item budget type thing from them? Do they have to report that to us? Like, does football have to report to the board in any way what they're spending? No.
We have their internal account, if they have a student activities account, which is when you approve the budget, that's one of the funds that is approved, it's the collection of all the internal account. But there's no process currently that says, here's football's request for next year.
Because
Or just like a detailed
Angela,
line
that's
item
where it came in with the
every year,
football
yeah.
helmets.
Yeah.
How did we get to the point where all of a sudden we were short all these helmets? We should have known that. So
No,
that's kind
we
of where my
shouldn't have.
Yeah, you should, because yes, you do,
No,
Deb.
no, no, because
You
what
keep track of, Deb, they have to know what helmets are still good for next year, what have to be refinished. I know all about the company, I read all that
Okay,
stuff.
so there
But-
was a
but-
circumstance that
No, no,
affected that
but-
decision.
But you know that helmets are only good for so long.
Absolutely.
I'm not criticizing anything, I'm just saying that in order to know to put a good line item for athletics, you gotta know what it's gonna cost. Like here it says in golf, it says that the school provides golf bags to the golf team. Is that true?
To run, no. What that's
Not
saying
that, yeah.
is, if we were to run a golf and we need the equipment,
We
then
do
we
run
would
golf.
need 6.
We do run golf, not if we're going to. We do
Right,
But if
run
we're
we
going to
do-
pay it,
boys and
but in
we're
girls.
going to pay it.
But if we want to provide
Okay.
golf bags to be part of the total cost of the program.
That's what it would cost.
Currently, we don't. We don't provide any of
All
that
right,
stuff.
okay, then everything that I asked for, that's not what this presentation was. So, and whether everyone disagrees, if you don't, we can just move on. But if we're gonna know what we need in our athletic budget, we gotta know what it costs to have sports next year. For our band program, what does it cost to have band run next year? The art, what does it cost? What are our students paying out of their pockets that if we as a board feel that shouldn't happen, and if we've got this extra money, that's when you start looking at what can we take away from parents and students in classrooms that they don't have to pay.
So are you saying like even uniforms? Because Kyle, do the baseball, do they buy their own uniforms?
Yes, we do.
I think just about every single
So-
sport
We don't provide
does.
uniforms
Yeah,
for any sports
we don't.
team.
Nothing, okay.
Right.
So you're talking like to provide a uniform every year?
Well, you know, what
do they last?
Right, I'm talking if we're going to provide uniforms, which in order to play a game or run on the track, whatever, you have to have some kind of uniform. So if the district's position is, we will provide uniforms, even if we want to say, we will provide this dollar amount for sports. So if the team decides that they want more or better, whatever, well, this is what the district will pay you. As opposed to they're doing fundraising for their uniforms, correct?
Correct.
The sports, I mean, I don't think we pay for any sports. So that's just where my question's coming from, because there's that attitude out there that we're just so athletic-minded, we spend all this money on athletics, when in reality, we don't really spend money on athletics. You know?
I agree with you.
You know what I'm saying? We don't. We have these parents who continuously fundraise, or these coaches and all of this to provide uniforms. Girls tennis, for instance, had more people come out this year, so they didn't have enough uniforms, and the first match was 10 days away, and the coach was told, you better start fundraising. So to me, that's wrong. We should know, you know what I'm saying? So, and if the band, it used to be back in my day, we paid for instrument, there were instruments, and if your kid played the saxophone, the district provided that. I'm just saying, now's the time to start looking at that stuff to help our families, help teachers, coaches, all of that stuff. That's what I'm looking for in the budget process.
That figure, Margaret, will change every year.
Right.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
It's going to
Yeah.
change because
Yeah.
we
As
may
it should.
need those plate things or whatever.
That's what,
You know?
but that's what I'm saying. So what is it now? What do we put in our budget for next year?
That we
We
know
should
we're
be
gonna
able to
need.
get, absolutely. And then as next year
Or-
comes, if that pitching thing falls apart, okay, that's something that has to be replaced for that sport. And oh, look, it says right here that this is the cost of it, or the average cost, so we know
What it should cost
that's
us.
what has to happen.
So are we asking Brian to go back and ask our athletic department to say, what do we want that figure? What does it cost to run it for
So
next year?
if I look at, and alphabetically, baseball is the first one. There's listed under equipment, baseball, ball buckets, pitching machines over. So if I asked, or Ms. Reiner got from either himself or the coaches, of this item that you provided, what are the items you need for next year?
For next year.
Yes,
And so I do that, we do that for each sport.
Yes.
That's going to give us a total number for next year.
Yes.
It's not going to take into consideration equipment
Anything
that's
extra.
in there that could break down or may, just what do you need each year.
but if there's
Unless they want it
equipment
somewhere,
that they think might not be good for next year, helmets, whatever that pitching mound, whatever that thing is, if that's something that coach should know, the athletic department should know. So how, we do it all the time, Brian. We budget $90,000 for a section, and we only wind up using 60 of it, and so then it's the same idea.
I think we
Well,
would
that's
have-
what.
But it's better to be ready for it.
But that's where, on that summary page, where we were coming from, if you looked at everything that was listed there, it totaled $318,000. So if you assume that certain things you can keep for a longevity, me, myself, and Ms. Reiner were looking at minimally putting 63 in there, knowing that we have that over the 5 years, every year, to replace or to buy the consumable supplies, if you will.
And if 63,000 is what can run the athletic program next year, then that's what gets put in the budget.
Problem was that didn't cover uniforms, did it?
That was just the equipment.
Yeah. And
Uniforms
if-
totaled another
okay.
136.
So that's a conversation.
But as a board,
Add more money.
if we believe that having a uniform when you are part of athletics is what should be provided to an athlete, then we have to figure out a way to fund it. What does it cost? And if it's a certain dollar amount, that's what the sport gets. The rest you got to figure out. And this year it's basketball. 3 years from now it'll be basketball again, because then that's all I'm talking about. Start really figuring out what it costs to have athletics, what kind of equipment, what kind of uniforms, all of that. That's what I was looking for. That's the only way you budget for it.
You were
Currently,
looking
with the
more for
budget that
next
you worked with Mr. Reinhardt, would that just be one $65,000 athletic line item a year? Whereas
that-
I think Mrs. Stelto would like to have it broken down into each sport line item?
No.
Is that what you're
No.
thinking
No,
more,
no, I just want to know, it's one line item, but in that line item, as a board member, I want to know, what does that entail? And as a board, we have to agree or say, this is what we want to pay for athletic. And if it's uniforms, whatever it is, that's what entails in that amount. I don't need that kind of breakdown in the budget,
So-
but I just need to know what it is.
So Tammy shared with me, when we was one of her previous districts, sometimes around this time, they will ask for requisitions, I don't know if that's the official name, where they will send out to each coach, tell me what you need for next year.
That's how most school districts do things.
We've never done that in this district. We have a set, and I don't know it off the top of my head, $10,000 for supplies, and as people have asked the athletic director, they have just spent it, whether they need letters or so forth, they spend it out of that supply. Even the tournament fees, it's been a set dollar value. We've never, in the whole budgeting process, been at a point where we've costed things out to this level. So I guess the next step is, if we want to go down that road, we can send, okay, here's your list that you provided us. What do you need for next year? And identify what that
For
list
each
is.
sport.
For each sport, and then come up with a dollar. Do you need uniforms for next year? Yes or no? So that would give us a doubt. And if
And
we're
then
going to
start
do.
the process of the 3-year or 4-year,
Purchase.
every 4 years. Like, it's set on here, right? How many years? Like, some would be
Yes.
3 years, some would be.
So what happens
Right.
with golf bags? Is that a need or is that a want?
I would
And
say
how do
most
you-
teams show up with matching golf bags at a match, would be my guess.
Well, and my thought would be,
That have your
if you don't have a
school
golf bag, Deb, what are you going to do with your
Well,
clubs?
because the kids all have golf bags. I'm
Yeah,
just
they
saying,
would
is
say
that
Blue
something
Devils on.
that have,
I would assume most
exactly.
schools show up that say
Is
Elmont
that
Raiders.
what we
I know
want?
they're
Is
good
that
golf, and I
a
would
need?
assume their bags will
That's,
say Elmont
and Deb,
Raiders.
that's the exact question, that if that's what the athletic department wants to do, then we have to decide how much.
I
for
get
that.
that, but they could say, well, we don't want to do that. We'd rather have this or whatever. I'm just talking the golf department, our golf period, you know? I guess that's got to be a decision on that coach and our AD. Is
Correct.
golf bags something we want, or is it not?
That is correct.
Well, I think it's also a decision of what is the image we want as a district.
Their
If you go to cheer and they all have their bags that say Richmond cheer, it's a matching, it's almost like a uniform.
It is.
If you go to baseball bat, they all got the Richmond Blue Devils with the 2 bats sticking up.
Well, and if
it's
you
part
look
of the
on
uniform.
golf, it says they have to provide their own pants, blah, blah,
Because they
something
wear
else, and they get, right, but yet that's their uniform when they golf, and they get a polo shirt. So if that's their uniform, if the shirt, the pants, the bag, if that's part of the uniform, what does that cost?
Again, though, is that something we're going to put out or not? And is that considered a need? When Brian said, when we just said, well, okay, what do you need to run your program next year?
Right.
I think there's a difference between need and wish.
Well, what I would like to see
And I don't
is
know
for
if
us
they
to
would
never
know
have to
that.
fundraise. I would like to see that parents, nobody in the district would ever have to fundraise in athletics. So if we
Oh,
could make
boy.
a step towards that in some
Or
way.
a step to help it, but Deb,
Yes.
you're right.
There's a
need,
difference.
and you're absolutely is, but that is for the athletic department
Okay.
and coach to decide what is the need.
Okay.
If the uniform looks like this, that's a need, it's not a wish. You know what I'm saying?
I know, but you and I may see it that way, they may not.
No, I don't want to know what, if that's what they say they need.
That's what they're saying. Okay.
Would
I'm
you-
just saying there is a difference.
Would you recommend like providing baseball pants? Because don't they get holes from sliding, and like how fast do they go through them?
They buy them, I think this year's either $28 or $30 a pair.
We don't
buy
provide
more than
baseball.
No, I
and
know what I'm
uniform.
saying is that, would you provide
Most kids,
pants?
most buy multiple pair.
Yeah. Do you-
So
Like,
a
we would
uniform
provide
could
one
be
pair.
one, if we want to go down, this
They would
uniform
get
could
it
be
Be
jersey,
one
band.
pant, one
and-
jersey.
Whatever they go get, whatever.
Whatever that
Coach
coach and our
defines as a
AD
uniform,
feel
right.
I
is.
think they got to return it, and if
Right.
there's holes in it, then we know we have to replace it.
Okay.
I would think they would have to
So,
return it.
so as a board, is that where we want Brian to go? So he can work with Chris and,
What happens if somebody guesses wrong? If they're going to project for the next year
Wow.
and they project low, where does the money come from? If they woefully project low, if double the number of kids go out for a team and it's not a team that's typically a basketball team where you've got a set number of people, where does the money come from? As I see this, isn't this just a lump sum? It's a broader amount of money, and I think it's a good idea to know what the costs are, but are we pigeonholing ourselves into a situation where we may not have enough money because we tried to get too specific?
But that could be in anything that we do, in any budget item that we do. We can project it's this much, and sometimes it would come if the projection was so low and the money's not there, the money's just not there.
or,
Or they
So like,
fundraise.
the
or
money
come
was
back to
budgeted
us.
based on what number we run a team at before we start making cuts, particularly at the high school level.
yeah.
So baseball, 15 was budgeted on a team, basketball, basically 15, I know it says 30 on the one sheet, but it's 15 on a team. Bowling, they typically have 8 on a team. I don't know if that's a standard number, or if that's the coaches, but that number came from the coaches. Competitive cheer is basically, there's 35, over 30 kids. So they created the number of what, if they were maxed out on a team. Now, we could have, if we had 30 freshmen come out, I don't know if it's ever been done, you have 2 freshman teams. We've done that in other, particularly at the middle school, where we've tried to not cut kids for middle school sports, and we might have added another team or another, and have them play a different, I don't say different league, but.
You wouldn't do that at the high school level.
You really wouldn't do that, I mean.
No.
But you do it at the middle school.
You
They
would
have the
you would never do that. You
process
would never have
too.
2 ninth grade teams on a sport at a high school level.
We've never, I mean, I don't know if we'd
I
ever.
think we
we'd
tried,
ever-
didn't we, that
I don't
one
know.
time? I don't know, I don't remember, but I thought we tried once because we had a large number of freshmen.
But I think we should look at the academic end of it as well.
I'm just going to say, I was thinking robotics, I was thinking,
While we're talking about it, I know the board approved the trap team 7 years ago at no cost, but they're still going. They're got 50 kids on the team still, middle school and high school. Is there anything we can do for them? I mean, they have brought success. They're well-known throughout the state. They already won a state championship in 2018. Is there anything we can do? Even if it's just a lump sum of just something, because they've received nothing, and those parents are fundraising just as much as anybody else.
I'd support that. Not sure what it would be. I don't know that you'd want to buy guns and ammo.
No,
but,
absolutely not.
That would be part of the uniform.
Right, but maybe
I've seen other districts that have, I mean, I know that they buy their vests and they have sponsors, so they put the sponsors on it.
Right.
But I've seen other districts that have the vests and then they have the logo on the back, the school logo, just for practices. I mean, of course, you'd want them at tournaments and stuff.
Do they pay when they go to those tournaments?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Trap
maybe-
raises a lot of money.
Yeah.
There's a lot of cost in the
So I'm saying
shells,
maybe the
practices,
dollar figure, a certain amount
Well,
that
just
What it
cuts
used to be
towards
when my
those.
son was on it was, like at the state tournament, each individual player had to pay their own fee. You know, and it wasn't a lump sum fee. But yeah, that
For
was.
each time they went?
For this, like the state tournament, I think it was around $35 for each player.
So it would be
that
something to look into.
To answer, James, your question, sometimes, as a person who has ran a high school budget, if I knew if Chris came to me and said, hey, we're going to be over on this, I, as a person in charge of that budget, had some movement within my budget. And so what I would do if I ran into that position, I'd go over to Tammy and I'd say, okay, Tammy, we need to look at this account. I know we're not going to spend this. Can we move some of that here to help out to make sure that when I turn that budget in, or in my June budget, I would balance? So there is some.
And even on
There's
a
a
bigger
little
scale,
give.
Brian has come to us over the years where that's why when we amend our budget.
Right.
If there's something that it looks like it was going to be a $50,000 amount and it's actually 72, Brian brings that information to us and we amend the budget to move that in. So there's like 3 times during the year where we might not get ourselves in a position where it's, holy crap, we absolutely don't have any money for that.
Okay.
So I know that as a high school principal, I would monitor all of my budgets. And if I knew I had an issue, like with Chris in athletics, I would meet with him to say, hey, this is where we're at, what's going on, what's happening. Because it is our job as far as administrator to make sure you balance come.
So if the school's buying uniforms, is that the property of the school that the teams have to turn in at that point at the end of the year?
Correct.
Okay. And I mean, do the parents, has anybody asked the parents? Because I know if I were a kid, I may want to keep my uniform. I might not. Maybe some of the parents don't mind that they're buying uniforms, maybe, and because their kids want to keep them. I don't know. I'm just throwing that out.
I would agree with you that
there.
that's
Maybe
part
we could
of.
offer, if you want to, you could pay for uniform, if you're not going to turn it back in.
Right.
I think the biggest issue with the uniforms is that we just bought a generic uniform because we were, every year, so no names would be on the back. We wouldn't have like that special stuff, and so a lot of the teams wanted to do those pieces, so that's when they started to fundraise because they wanted to get jerseys with the names on the back, or bags with their name on it, or whatever. So that's where kind of that started to go.
And that's perfectly well, because I know there are some coaches that they like specific warm-up stuff, something different. But if it's basic, this is what your sport gets for uniforms, so there's your money. So if you want extra stuff, it's got to come from you. But here's the dollar figure that's going to outfit your team to participate in that sport.
There are some uniforms that, I'm going to call them our consumable uniforms, like golf, because there's so few, and it's a polo. The kids just take them home and they got a new. I'm guessing tennis is similar. Trap would be another one.
Tennis turns their uniforms back in.
Bowling doesn't turn theirs
Those
in
don't.
either.
I'm sorry.
Bowling
I'm
keeps theirs
sorry,
as well.
bowling.
We turn ours back in.
Right.
So I usually buy one that they keep. We usually have 3 uniforms in a year.
All right, so I will work with Chris to get the needs, the specific needs for next year, and determining which uniforms would be needed for next year if they don't aren't already planning on having them be reused for next year. You want me to look at trap, because trap is always considered a
Club,
club
right?
sport with equestrian, though we aren't currently running an equestrian team. You want me
Well,
to
does
add
it make a
trap
difference
there?
to us that they're a club? I guess because.
The only
because
difference is we don't
Bowling is
charge-
a club, right?
We
Or is it
don't
now?
charge
No,
them
it's
the,
part of the MH, I think.
bowling's part of the MHSAA.
It is now? Okay.
The trap is not yet, it's part of the, I forgot the acronym.
Michigan trap
High School-
shooting.
Michigan High School trap shooting.
Yeah, and so,
And there's
and
a,
they have not been charged the pay to participate fee.
Correct.
Because we've always said if you are paying into that, we help you when you go to states, where we didn't help trap when they went to states because they didn't pay that pay to participate, which was help. I mean, that's really the distinguishing
there's the
factor, is if you
difference.
pay the pay to
yeah, I didn't
participate,
think of that.
you're, I don't want to say recognized, that's the wrong choice of words, but you
But
get
it kind
support
of
from
is.
the
But we
school.
used it from, I
But
think
it
we
kind of
used
is.
MHSAA as
Yeah.
our, kind of our guideline or our,
But trap and equestrian would fall under those other sports that we are looking at. I mean, we're also looking at esports, and that's one that Renee's exploring, because that's a huge industry that's growing. And we have a group of students that are very interested in esports. They're not in sports, but they're interested in esports.
Well, so are you saying that trap would have to pay, like, you might ask a paid to participate fee, but then you're only going to pay like a state, so it wouldn't be cost effective for them, because if they're doing a paid to participate.
I guess where I'm looking for the board, do you want me to include trap as if it was the baseball, wrestling?
and let's see what
football?
those costs are.
I mean,
I guess
it's 40 to 50 kids. I mean, even if the T-shirt is sort of like their, or they do have a competition shirt, but.
And like Margaret said, for them to go to competition.
Yeah.
I would be willing to
Yeah.
pay for that.
Yeah, it's something, because they're actually doing a great job and bringing notoriety to the
Yes.
school, and they're very good. So, I
Yeah.
mean, just something to give them a uniform, whether that, or a patch on the back of their shooting vest, or a shooting vest, whatever.
I wouldn't have a problem with, you said it was trap and you said equestrian, even though there's nothing, but if it was just some kind of line item, like we do the state championship thing, if it was something that said that, whatever dollar figure that was used towards when they go to that kind of stuff, I wouldn't have a problem with that. Because if they're paying for it themselves,
It would help also,
yeah.
So you also
Okay,
need.
so then on the others, in the previous budgets, we have taken away fees that students pays for courses, like lab fees and so, we've eliminated all that. So
Yep.
there's no fees any parents are paying for the core. So are you looking at just band,
Then it's just
choir,
band.
and art?
Our robotics.
Because we have
and-
Well,
increased.
but art, I thought if, nobody's paying extra for art stuff then, right?
Right, and we increase those supply dollars. We have line items for the science, I don't remember how it is, but there's a line item for each grade level at the elementary school.
Right.
Each subject has a line item budget.
Then I would say band and choir.
And I would just double check with the art teachers that they're not
Are they
spending their own
getting?
money.
Well, yeah.
So we're not hearing that.
Yep.
Sufficient.
Yeah, because I
So
remember my
art,
kids-
band, and choir,
Then what about the robotics team?
But
They have
I
a
think we-
uniform.
When we eliminated that, I thought that had stopped.
I mean, I'm
But
just,
maybe it hasn't.
it's another group
You know.
in our.
Well, I think
won't
us
know
parents, we
until we
even
ask.
play for shirts for National Junior Honor Society and many of those academic clubs.
Those are clubs, though.
So, yeah, that's what I'm saying, we're bringing up clubs.
The
Now, how far do
rifle
we
is
go?
considered a club. I'm not saying
Robotics
it
is a
isn't,
club.
but it's considered
Trap's
a
a
club.
club.
So where do you draw the line?
Yeah.
Well, I don't think, but yeah, I personally, I look at the trap shooting different than I do the NHS getting shirts. I just do.
Sure, absolutely.
So to play devil's advocate, we are heading into an inflationary time where gas prices are skyrocketing. I remember when the sports programs were cut and there was pay to play, so should there also be some consideration and thought about, this is going to cost money and we don't know what is going to happen within the next year? I'm just saying, you should probably think about that, because, we're talking about, let's buy this, let's buy that, and I hate to be the wet blanket,
I agree.
But that, we don't know what could happen over the summer with gas prices. We don't know how that's going to affect travel costs. We don't know. So, before everybody gets fitted.
But we're not committing to anything.
Right.
Yeah,
And
we're just getting
I don't disagree with that argument at
Yeah,
all.
before
But-
everybody's fitted
But
with
unless
the new
I have all the
uniform.
information, I
Right.
can't even be a wet blanket.
I know, but it just seemed like
No,
it was
true.
getting
I mean-
very excited, about let's do this, let's do that. And I'm just
Absolutely.
saying, maybe,
No,
we gotta-
but unless we get all the facts in front of us, we don't know what we're doing.
Right.
So I think that's what we need to do.
So my vote's a no.
Okay.
I'm kidding.
No, you
Nobody voted anything. I was
No,
just-
we're
not voting. We're not
What you
voting.
say is my opinion is no at this point.
No, my opinion's, and I don't know.
I get
Art,
what you're saying.
band, choir, robotics, trap, and the sports team.
Okay, let's leave it at that.
Are we
Is
missing
there
anybody?
anything specific in any other area?
Yes, yeah. Classroom supplies, since you're going out there seeking information.
Teacher supply.
I just wondered, like copy paper, classrooms don't have to order that, right? It's supplied,
No.
it's an...
Comes out of the building
Okay.
general supply account.
Is anything like, I'm thinking elementary, because that's what I know, like construction paper, is that,
So it should all come out of
Yeah.
the building general supply.
so there's a supply that teachers
Yes.
can go...
And we
get?
boosted that, remember?
There's a general supply budget for the building, which is
includes those.
$10,000-$15,000-ish. And then there are individual supplies that are at the discretion of the teacher in the general fund. So first grade has a line item, and then,
So much money. in the
I don't know how much it
first
is.
grade this
Science department has a line item which they ordered their dissection animals and chemicals. Art has a line item that she orders clay from at the middle school or so. So they have their own individual. And then oftentimes, teachers have an internal account. So the first grade teachers may ask parents for $20 because they want to use Weekly Reader or something unique that they want to do. And so they'll put their money in their internal account and use that. So there's kind of 3 pots of money that are
And then
used.
sometimes doesn't the PTG over there
Yeah.
give
The
them,
PTOs and
or
PTAs
PTO or whatever?
do a lot of.
So there's money coming in that way too.
No teacher should be using their classroom budgets, their line item, for copy paper or basic supply. That should
Okay,
come out
well-
of the general fund, of the general building supply fund.
And Jim, going back to the wet blanket, when gas prices and costs and all that, that is Brian and Tammy's job when they present us the line items of the budget, they will adjust that knowing that prices are going up, and that will be explained to us that last year it was this much, this year it's coming, so that we know that's their job to put all that together for us.
When you approved well, you weren't here on the board yet, but the February budget that was approved, we increased electrical, we increased because now putting air conditioning, we really haven't run it. So I would be pretty certain that the budget you put in this year, you're going to have extra money come June that we didn't spend because we didn't run air conditioning.
Right.
But I'm at least keeping the same amount going into next year because now we're going to run a cycle of air conditioning. So that's where I kind of led that. I believe we're going to be better off at the end of this year than that 52,000. And if as a board, you want to take that better off and do a one-time copier investment to get on that cycle, it's an opportunity to do it. So, and then we'll have more conversations as we get closer, but I will verify classroom accounts. I'll verify that
Can I ask, are
there's.
you still ordering from school specialty for all the supplies?
Each building orders we don't collectively order as a district. They order monthly whenever their paper runs out or their supplies run. I know Denise uses school specialty a lot at the elementary school. I can't say the high school and middle school. I don't know off the top of my head what they use.
I just wonder, I know some of the supplies are not top quality, so they don't last.
It's like the only crayon is really a Crayola crayon.
I mean, if
Not a rose
if
art
we could
crayon.
just buy better crayons and pencils and things that last instead of just buying stuff that doesn't and then it's gone. And
I know when I was at high school, we used Staples a lot because they delivered and they would deliver it.
Who is it?
Staples.
Staples, who's the company we use from? Standard Office Supplies. We have a little different supplies in the building for needs. So All right, I will verify art, band, choir, robotics, look at trap team within the sports context, and then classroom supplies. The last thing that I have from a budgetary perspective or conversation is I would like the board to consider currently in our ESSER $3, we have a retention bonus. Teachers this year got $500. Next year and the following year, they'll get 1% if they return. In the last contract that was settled with administrators, next year and the following year, they will get 1%. I would ask the board to consider or recommend or give me direction that we apply that same principle to either be a $500 or 1%, basically whatever is more. For an hourly worker, it's typically going to be a $500. For a salary worker, it's typically going to be 1%. That we apply it for everybody else in the organization. If they come back next year and we use our ESSER funds to pay for that. We have expenses that we line item in that ESSER that we haven't spent this year. We have an instructional coach that we have not found someone. We have had COVID building aids. We have not had 6 COVID building aids all year. So we have line items that we budgeted for that we haven't spent the money. One of the things you can do is put incentives for people to stay with us. The other two groups, the teachers and administrators, we pay it. If they come back at the beginning of the school year, we pay it on the December 10th pay. Kind of a nice bonus before the holiday for them. So if the board's willing to do that, I'd like to apply that to the rest of the organization outside of any contract negotiations. I would go to each union, the food service parents, say this is what the board has kind of directed me to do, and we're willing to do that. You could have a union that says, no, we don't want to do it, we want to negotiate that because wages, hours, and working conditions is a subject of bargaining, but I don't expect that to happen, but they could.
Is 1% competitive? I mean, that would be a terrible tip at a restaurant.
It could be $700 for someone making $70,000. Hourly workers, 1% would be under $500 because most of them make about 25 to 30. I'm ballparking. So a $500, what we pay teachers would be a better.
Is it competitive? I mean, do other districts do this in the state, or is this something?
Some districts have done it. Some haven't. Some have tried to use dollars to do signing bonuses, which we could do that in other areas. But I was just trying to, because as more and more the other two groups, which are our largest two groups, it's going to get out there how come we don't have it. I think it would be it won't cost anything to the general fund. It would be through ESSER.
I'd be fine with that.
Yes, I think it's a great idea.
Are we good with that?
Yes.
So I will meet with each union group and let them know this is what we're doing. If they have any objections, I will report it back to you, and we'll have to go through that process with them. But the other groups will be there. So that's all I have from the budget. So.
Thank you.
Great.
Okay, you're up now for bond update.
Bond, I just got a couple things. The softball field is underway for the varsity. There's a lot of underground work and drainage work that's being worked on. There is back where the trees meet the softball field on would be the first base line. There's some drainage issues that we've got to deal with in the back. There's a little creek that runs back there that drains to the back of the property, and along the back of the property is another creek that runs around and goes into the subdivision behind us. Over time, that creek that's on our property that runs to the main one, debris, grass clippings, twigs have been dumped kind of back there, and the flow of the water has been running towards the softball field, which explains why that area is often wet. So we've got to do some work and we got to deal with the Drain Commission and so forth, because that's considered a wetland area and some of that back property. So we're to get the drainage flow to go the way it's supposed to go, away from the property. So it's all budgeted so far within the scope of the expected overages that as you open things up when you do construction. But just wanted to let the board know that as we're working on that. Next week, the high school parking lot behind the auditorium is expected to start demolition. Our goal is to have that done by the end of June, so that when they tear up the student parking lot and the road between the football field and high school, that would become the parking lot that's used, or the front one, for any summer programs that are being housed at the high school. So there's a spot that they can park. And the last thing is, our punch list is getting smaller, but we still have a punch list of all the summer, from last summer, that we're still waiting on some. The switches to raise and lower this without a key are not in yet. So stuff like that. It's on the list, and we're still chipping away at it. That's all I have.
Thank you. Next is our public comments. There are no public comments, so we will move on. Superintendent and legislative update.
I'll start with last week, the Senate released their K-12 budget. I mentioned it earlier. It was released last Thursday. We got kind of a preview. It got secretly released earlier in the week, so on Wednesday when our superintendent's meeting. The Senate proposed a $450 increase per pupil. That still doesn't make everybody equal, because there are some districts that still receive about $3,000 more than us, based on nuances in the law, but it gets a majority of them districts up to that foundation. What's interesting is the Senate's budget has no increases for special ed costs, no increases for at-risk funding, or ISD costs, or Great Start Readiness program. There's only a very limited investment in the Senate budget regarding school health and school safety. You talked about that, Cliff, and expenses are exceeding, gas prices and all that. One of the things that I'm concerned is that Great Start Readiness, they are back funding that Great Start Readiness with federal dollars. When that runs out, they're going to have to find state dollars to make that up, and I don't see it, but I'm not as intimate with their budgets, but so it's something that we'll have to look at. In the Senate proposal, they once again fully fund community colleges out of the school aid fund at a total of $450 million. That's an increase over 3% from last year. In the Senate budget, which I find this very interesting, they include $1.3 billion from the school aid fund. In that is also included $581 million to pay off outstanding unfunded MISPER liabilities for 7 universities that participate in the system, but do not change any of our liabilities for the public school systems, our unfunded liability, which is millions when we look at that budget, or that audit report. You see that every year. So it's just something to watch. There is the very simplified version of the budget. In the recent dashboard issue of the Michigan Association, there was an article or a request to boards to consider adopting a resolution to show support for Michigan Kids for Our Schools Coalition. This is a coalition that is working against another coalition called Let Michigan Kids Learn, which is a ballot initiative, basically to allow tax dollars to be written off, contributions for scholarships. It's an end around to vouchers.
For vouchers.
And so there's a group called Let Michigan Kids Learn. It's funded by the DeVos Group that has come year in, year out regarding vouchers. And there's other organizations trying to prevent public funds from being spent. The Michigan Constitution is clear that it says by creating indirect, you can't pay for non-public schools using any indirect state aid costs. So if the board wants to consider adopting a resolution, if you want to talk about it or let me know, I can put it on a future agenda if the board wants to take a position to not support Let Michigan Kids Learn, which is, again, that initiative to move taxpayer dollars to non-public and private schools.
Are the local, the MEA, any of them
I have
involved
not,
in
well,
any of that?
MEA is in the campaign to try to prevent
On this other problem?
on not allowing the vouchers and working against, trying to educate people on what the real motive is for this. you know, when you talk about tax breaks and contribution, it reduces dollars to the school aid fund, which is ultimately going to affect it. I mean, there's a conversation about making all the taxes on gas tax 100% go towards the road. Well, that's millions of dollars of lost revenue for the school aid fund. So if they're giving us potentially $400 this year and they gave us $400 next year, that's not sustainable in a couple of years. We're going to be back to $50. And the timing of everything, I'm not predicting it'll be 50, but some low figures like that. The timing for us is going to be all of our contracts will be set to be negotiated, and we're not going to have the increases. I don't know how they can sustain it without coming with some other revenue. Thank goodness for the, not thank goodness for COVID, but the tax on marijuana, the tax on online gambling provided a lot more revenue than the state ever expected. Guess what, if you're locked at home, there's nothing else to do. I don't know. But it's a revenue that, if you're losing revenue, politicians don't like to create a new tax or an increase, especially in an election year. So, just a reminder, next year, we no longer will be offering free and reduced lunches for students, for all students. It goes back to the pre-pandemic. There is a call. I know the School Board Association as well as the Superintendent's Association is trying to put pressure to extend it one more year because we don't know kind of this tail end of the COVID and this latest variant, how it's going to affect schools next year, and just to extend it one more year till September 23. But right now it's set to expire June 30th of 22. So our summer food program will go back to what it was previously, where you have to actually eat on site. You can't pick up the meal and go anymore. And next school year, if they don't have a free and reduced lunch application on file, which a lot of our parents haven't filled them out because they've received them, they're going to have to pay from day one, which is going to be trying to get them to fill it out is a challenge. So, lastly, just some updates going on at the school. Lee's School received the Guardian Award through the St. Clair County Earth Day Fair Committee. They'll be recognized this Friday and Saturday at a ceremony at the Blue Water Earth Fair. Rhonda LaGroy is one of the Green School sponsors. They also were approved for a grant raising salmon in the classroom, where they will actually raise salmon, and then working with the DNR, will release salmon as part of the DNR's program. So
Brian, we can put it out
Give
in
to the
that
culinary
creek out back there.
we could put it in that creek. Preschool students are enjoying this Wednesday donuts with grown-ups. So trying to be inclusive of all families. To be able to, if they don't have a mom or dad, sometimes we do moms and muffins, dads and donuts. We have a lot of students that don't have that traditional household, so just a great way to bring parents into the community.
Question I have about that.
Yes.
Is it at the student's classroom, or is it going to be done like in the cafeteria as a group, or?
I will find out. I don't know that answer off the top of my head, but I will find out and get it back to you.
Traditionally, it's in the cafeteria. Yeah, usually that's where they.
We've been really trying to put things back to pre-pandemic, trying to be normal.
Well, Jackson's visitor was asking, and I'm like, I think you go to his classroom. I don't know. It's just, it's all new at the preschool level, so I don't know.
I will check.
Because maybe at the preschool it might be different too.
All three schools celebrated Earth Day. Middle school, they had a Spirit Week last week. Many of the classes were out around the grounds picking up and trying to make their impact on the environment and protecting the environment. They had a great professional development right after Easter, the Monday after Easter, with Dr. Schrock from the math consultant from the ISD, really unpacking the standards and meeting content areas, really looking at proficiency and trying to get kids and our math scores up. At the high school, PSAT and SAT makeup start this Wednesday and Thursday. Blue Devil Cafe, we open tomorrow. The Richmond Rotary Group is coming tomorrow. Thursday and Friday, you should have received a letter. You are welcome if you can come. We also have the city council, the township boards from each of our municipalities. We have priests and pastors from the area. We have the fire chief, EMS. There's about 56, 60 people that we've invited to come over Thursday and Friday And next week on May 5th, we officially open to the public, so you'll see a lot of Facebook posts and promoting that through the month of May, 11 to 1, every Thursday and Friday. If you hadn't had a chance, and if you can somehow squeeze it into your schedule, please try to get there. It's great food. The kids do a great job from when they first opened on March 17th to last week I was there. Their confidence level, their presentation, I haven't had a bad meal yet. And the high school, we have the all-academic banquet tomorrow, the MAC all-academic banquet, which will be recognizing Emma Milbrandt, Stephanie Lindsay, and Connor Germain at that banquet. State choir chorale is at Rochester High School Wednesday morning, so good luck to them at state competition. In your packet or folder, I gave you a picture of the first robotics team. They competed. They ended up getting plane tickets to Houston. The posts have been great. They have been very thankful. I'm going to try to get them at a future board and to kind of explain their experience to you. I can't tell you the number of thank you emails. Please thank the board. Please thank the sponsor. They really appreciated your commitment to get them there. They placed 28th in their division. When you think of the magnitude and the size of it, so it's pretty remarkable. I mean, it's pretty remarkable what they've accomplished. Monday, May 9th, as I mentioned earlier with the ISD budget, we'll be sending teams to the Behavioral Threat Assessment and Management Training. Teams of 4 in each building. We'll be sending 2 this training and the other 2 at the next training, but it's to provide, it's a county-wide system of identifying and screening potential threats in school. It's another way we're trying to be proactive rather than react when we got the situation. Wednesday, May 4th, Students Against Destructive Decisions, also known as SAD, will be conducting a mock accident. We haven't done this in a while, but they'll be conducting with prom on May 6th, trying to convince kids. Mr. Delore, who's a SAD advisor, has been working with various agencies to coordinate, helping kids understand poor decisions can have deadly consequences. So you may see some wreckage out in the front in some of the programs. I'd like to congratulate Ms. Era and Mr. Castle. We were one of 3 schools recognized by the Michigan, by Yin Chang Yi. She is the research consultant in the Office of Career and Technical Education for the Michigan Department of Education. Every year we have to do a post-CT survey of our graduates and where they were. We performed at a 95% response rate with less than 20% at a proxy on time. And again, we were only 3 schools in Macomb County that were reached this level. So it's a lot of work, it's a lot of time. Congratulations to those 2. And then I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Era. Fun fact about Richmond that you may not have known.
Okay. We have a total of 59 English language learners in K-12 here at Richmond. And the fun fact is that there are actually 14 different languages spoken among those 59 EL learners, the most popular being Spanish. However, there are other languages such as Burmese, Arabic, Samoan, Indonesian are just a few of the very diverse 14 different languages that are spoken here at Richmond.
So we may not be as diverse as other districts, but we are diverse, and sometimes that isn't always showcased in our district, especially on state reporting, because if it's less than 30, we can't say anything about it type of thing. But we have a growing population, and like I said, as you said, with 59 English learners in our district with 14 different languages. It's pretty remarkable. So different backgrounds and what people bring to our community in our district. So with that, that's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Items of interest from the board. I'll start down with Kyle.
Yesterday morning, I had the privilege of being in this room to witness our senior student athletes that are going on to play in college have their photo ops for their signing day. Just want to congratulate them and their families and all the hard work, the years of dedication, well deserved, going on to the next level, and just a nice day for all of them, and it was good to see.
Thank you. Danielle?
I actually want to thank Margaret for sending me over to, or volunteering me to go to the meeting on Thursday. Usually the treasurer goes, but I probably wouldn't have spoken up to go, and I got a lot out of it, and I really enjoyed it, so thanks.
Angela?
I'm all set, thank you.
Jerry?
I'm all set, thanks.
Margaret?
Good.
James?
All set.
I'm all set. The only thing I shouldn't say I'm all set. I just need someone to work with me on staff appreciation. So we have something in place already, but I just need, if anybody wants to help me put a letter together or do something, please let me know. Otherwise, that's it. Okay, our next item on our agenda is our approval. I'm looking for a motion for the approval of the overnight trip for Richmond softball.
I move to accept the recommendation of the superintendent and approve the varsity softball overnight trip request to Gaylord, Michigan on May 20th to May 22nd, 2022, as presented during the April 11th board meeting and outlined in the attached documentation.
Do I have support?
Support.
Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Being no further business, we are adjourning at 9:15.